I had always believed that my marriage was built on trust. 7 years together, countless memories, and a bond that I thought was unshakable. Sure, lately, my wife had seemed distant, quieter at dinner, lost in her thoughts, and more attached to her phone than ever before. But I told myself it was just stress. Work had been intense for both of us, and maybe she just needed some space. That night, everything changed. I came home later than usual, exhausted from a long shift. The house was dimly lit, the kind of quiet that felt unnatural. Something was off. I kicked off my shoes and was about to grab a drink when I heard a faint buzzing. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was just the hum of the fridge, but then it happened again. And again, a rhythmic, persistent vibration. I followed the sound into the kitchen and saw my wife's phone lying on the counter, its screen lighting up the dark room. My stomach twisted as I watched message after message appear, each one coming in rapid succession. Who the hell was texting her this late? I leaned in, trying to get a glimpse of the name on the screen, but the notifications disappeared just as quickly as they arrived. The phone vibrated again. My heart pounded. Something inside me whispered that I shouldn't just walk away. I called out, keeping my voice casual. "Hey, someone's trying to reach you. Who's texting you so late?" From the living room, I heard the shuffle of feet, the slight hesitation before she responded. "Oh, just a friend." "A friend?" Her tone was off, too light, too dismissive, and she still hadn't moved to check the phone. Normally, if it were a friend, she'd at least glance at the screen, maybe send a quick reply. But instead, she just stood there, half hidden by the doorway, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. I felt my stomach sink. A friend? This late? I pressed, stepping closer. She finally moved toward the phone, but not in the way I expected. Instead of picking it up right away, she hovered over it, her fingers twitching as if she were trying to decide whether to unlock it. Then she did something that sent a cold wave through me. She turned the phone over, face down. It was such a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. A habit formed out of secrecy, a silent wall put between us. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. "Let me see," I said before I could stop myself. She hesitated, and for the briefest moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Panic. "Why?" she asked, forcing out a laugh that sounded completely unnatural. "Because I'm your husband. Because you said it's just a friend. So why does it feel like you don't want me to see?" The tension in the air thickened. She glanced at the phone, then at me, and I could almost see the gears turning in her mind, trying to come up with an excuse, a deflection, anything to get out of this moment. And then, before I could react, she grabbed the phone and pressed it to her chest, shielding it from view. I felt something inside me crack. "Who is it, Emily?" My voice was quieter now, steadier, but the weight behind it was undeniable. She shook her head. "It's nothing. You're overreacting." But I wasn't. I knew what I saw. I knew what I felt. And deep down, I already knew the truth. Something was happening. Something that she didn't want me to find out. And I wasn't going to let it go. The unease had been growing inside me for weeks. At first, I tried to ignore it, convincing myself that I was overthinking, that I was being paranoid. But the signs were there, small at first, then impossible to overlook. Emily had always been open with her phone, leaving it on the nightstand, on the kitchen counter, tossing it onto the couch without a second thought. But lately, it was always in her hand or tucked away in her pocket. She never left it behind, not even for a second. It was the way she held it, too, like a secret she was terrified of being exposed. Then came the bathroom trips. She had never been the type to bring her phone with her. But suddenly, she wouldn't go anywhere without it. Even in the middle of the night, when she'd get up to use the bathroom, I'd hear the soft click of the screen lighting up, the barely audible tap of her fingers typing. She thought I didn't notice. I did, and it ate away at me. I started watching her more closely, how she angled the screen away from me, how she put the phone on silent, how she'd smile at a notification and then quickly swipe it away before I could see. Something was going on. And then one evening, my moment came. She had just finished dinner and stood up abruptly, stretching. "I'm going to take a shower," she said, running a hand through her hair. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, but my heart pounded. Because for the first time in weeks, she left her phone behind. It sat on the kitchen counter, screen face up. Harmless, innocent, but I knew better. The sound of the shower turning on sent a jolt through my body. My pulse quickened, my palms damp with sweat. This was it. If I hesitated, I'd lose my only chance. I stepped forward, reached for the phone, and grabbed it with slightly trembling fingers. I knew her passcode. Of course I did. She had told me once, years ago, back when trust wasn't a question. I hadn't used it since. Until now. I typed in the numbers, my breath catching as the screen unlocked. Messages. My eyes darted to the most recent conversation at the top, a name I didn't recognize. No last name, just J. My gut twisted. I tapped it open. The first message was simple. "I can't stop thinking about last night." I stared at the words, my mind blank, my body frozen. Last night? My hands tightened around the phone. I scrolled up, heart hammering, pulse roaring in my ears. Another message. "When can I see you again?" Then another. "Miss you already." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just casual talk. This wasn't some innocent conversation with a coworker or an old friend. This was something else. Something I wasn't supposed to see. I kept scrolling, my fingers moving faster, my breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. Then I saw it. A photo. It wasn't explicit, but it didn't have to be. It was intimate, personal. The way she smiled in it, it wasn't for me. It had been meant for him. I felt my blood run cold. The shower was still running upstairs. She had no idea what I was looking at. No idea that in the span of a few messages, everything I believed about our marriage had come crashing down. I set the phone down slowly, my hands shaking. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. One thing was certain. I couldn't pretend I didn't know. Not anymore. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stood frozen in place, staring at the screen. The messages blurred in front of me, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. At first, they were just words, casual at a glance, maybe even innocent if you didn't read too closely. But I did, and the more I read, the harder it became to breathe. The messages weren't just friendly. They were flirty, intimate, laced with an undercurrent of something I didn't want to acknowledge, something that made my stomach churn. I scrolled up, searching for a name, an identity, bracing myself for what I might find. A coworker? A close friend I didn't know about? But when my eyes landed on the contact name, my entire body went cold. Dad. My hands began to shake. No, that had to be a mistake. This wasn't possible. My father had been gone for years. A heart attack had taken him unexpectedly, leaving a gaping hole in my life that had never fully healed. His number was disconnected. His phone was probably buried somewhere in a landfill by now. So, why the hell was she texting someone under his name? A wave of nausea rolled through me as my mind scrambled for answers. Maybe it was an old contact she forgot to change. Maybe she had just saved someone else's number under my dad's name. People did that sometimes, right? But as my eyes darted back to the messages, those flimsy justifications shattered like glass. I can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? Miss you already. I scrolled further, my fingers moving faster than my brain could keep up. And then, he doesn't suspect a thing. I feel guilty, but you make me feel alive again. A strangled noise caught in my throat. This wasn't just some random contact. This wasn't a misnamed friend. Whoever this was, they were someone she felt the need to hide. And then, the worst part, a photo. It wasn't graphic, but it was intimate. The kind of picture a wife should never be sending to anyone but her husband. The playful tilt of her head, the way she bit her lip, it was meant for him, not for me. My breath came in short, ragged bursts. The phone suddenly felt heavy in my hand, like it was burning through my skin. I forced myself to think, to reason. If she had saved this number under my father's name, it was deliberate, a shield, a way to keep her secret hidden in plain sight. Because who the hell would question a woman texting Dad late at night? She had counted on me never looking. And for weeks, maybe months, I hadn't. The shower was still running upstairs. She had no idea I was standing here, phone in hand, watching the life I thought we had built collapse right in front of me. My fists clenched. This wasn't just betrayal. This was something darker, something calculated. And I wasn't sure I wanted to know just how deep it went. And my hands felt numb as I clicked on the chat, my heart pounding so violently that I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. My breath came in short, uneven gasps. A part of me screamed to stop, to put the phone down, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. But it was too late. The messages were right there, staring back at me, each word cutting deeper than the last. I can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible. I love the way you touch me. I've never felt this alive before. My vision blurred. No, no, no. This had to be a mistake. A cruel, twisted joke. Maybe a misunderstanding. Maybe I wasn't reading it right. I scrolled further, my fingers shaking, desperate to find some explanation, something that would prove this wasn't what it looked like. But the messages kept coming. Being with you makes me feel young again. I wish we didn't have to hide. I hate sneaking around, but I can't stop myself. You make me feel things I never thought I'd feel again. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering onto the counter. I staggered back, gripping the edge of the kitchen island to keep myself upright. My father, and my wife. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I might be sick. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. My father had been gone for years. Buried. Laid to rest. I had stood at his funeral. I had watched them lower his casket into the ground. So who the hell was she talking to? I grabbed the phone again, my fingers swiping furiously. There had to be an explanation. A sick coincidence. A different dad, someone with the same name, someone completely unrelated. But the messages weren't vague. They were specific, personal, intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. And then, a voice message. A fresh wave of nausea hit me as I hesitated. My finger hovered over the play button. I had to hear it. I pressed play. At first, there was only the crackle of background noise. Then, a deep, familiar voice. Raspy. A little older, but unmistakable. My love, the voice whispered. I miss you already. I can still feel you on me. The phone nearly slipped from my hand again. It was him, not someone with the same name. Not a cruel trick of the mind. It was my father's voice. But that was impossible. I gasped for air, my chest tightening, the world tilting beneath me. Every rational thought in my mind shattered, replaced by sheer, paralyzing disbelief. I turned toward the staircase, toward the sound of the running shower. She was up there, completely unaware that I had uncovered the truth. Or maybe she knew I would. I glanced at the phone again. The messages weren't old. They weren't from before he died. They were recent. Days ago. My father was dead. So how the hell was he still talking to my wife? I couldn't breathe. My mind was a storm of chaos, my pulse hammering in my ears as I scrolled higher and higher, desperate for something, anything, that would make this all make sense. Maybe it was a cruel joke. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe, but then I saw the photos, and the world as I knew it came crashing down. The first image stopped my breath cold. My wife. She was in a hotel room, standing near a massive king-size bed. Soft lighting. A bottle of champagne chilling in a bucket of ice. She wore lingerie I had never seen before, delicate, lacy, meant to be seen. Not by me. The second image made my skin crawl. She was sitting on the edge of the bed now, a coy, teasing smile on her lips, her fingers lightly tugging at the strap of her bra, performing for the camera. For him. And then the final image. My stomach lurched, because I saw him, sitting on the bed, too close to her, his shirt unbuttoned. My father. A cold wave of nausea rolled through me. My vision blurred, my knees buckling under the sheer force of the horror unraveling before me. This was real. No trick, no misunderstanding, no excuse I could cling to. The messages, the photos, the voice recording. It was all real. A scream built in my throat, but it got trapped somewhere deep in my chest, swallowed by the suffocating weight of the truth. My wife, my father, together. Betrayal wasn't even the right word. This was something beyond that, something twisted and unfathomable. A violation of everything I had ever believed in. I felt my hands clenching, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The room felt too small, the walls pressing in around me. My body wanted to run, but my mind demanded answers. How? How was this possible? My father had been dead for years. I had stood at his funeral. I had buried him. And yet, this was recent. These messages, these photos. Days ago, not years. The shower upstairs was still running. She had no idea that, at this exact moment, everything she thought was hidden had come undone. A sick thought crawled into my head. Had she even planned to tell me? Ever? Or was I just supposed to live in ignorance while they... I gritted my teeth, swallowing the bile rising in my throat. I couldn't stand here. Not anymore. I needed to know the truth. And there was only one way to get it. The shower shut off. I turned toward the stairs, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. It was time to confront my wife. And nothing would ever be the same again. My hands were shaking. My breath came in ragged, uneven gasps. My body felt detached, like I was watching myself from somewhere outside my own skin. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But the truth was right there in my hands, on the screen, in the photos, in the messages that burned into my brain like a brand I would never escape. I had two choices. Pretend I never saw it. Bury it deep inside. Let it rot and fester until it consumed me from the inside out. Confront her. Right here. Right now. There was no choice, really. I turned toward the stairs, my legs moving before I could think. My body was running on something raw, something instinctive. The shower had just stopped. Water still dripped onto the tile floor as I pushed open the bathroom door, my knuckles white around the phone. Steam filled the air, thick and humid, curling around me like a living thing. And there she was. Emily stood in front of the mirror, wrapped in a towel, her damp hair clinging to her shoulders. She was wiping away the condensation from the glass, humming softly to herself. So calm, so unaware, like nothing had happened, like my entire world hadn't just come crashing down. I stormed in and slammed the phone down on the counter, the sound cracking through the air like a gunshot. She jumped, eyes snapping to mine through the mirror. And then she saw the phone. Her face drained of color so fast it was like someone had ripped the life out of her. Her fingers still gripping the towel went rigid. Her breath hitched in her throat. She knew. She knew what I had seen. I didn't have to say a word, but I did anyway. What the hell is this? My voice came out sharp, broken. I barely recognized it. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there, pale, trembling, like she had just seen a ghost. Or maybe she had. I could see the thoughts racing behind her eyes, spinning, calculating, desperate. She swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the sink as if it could hold her up. I don't know what you... Don't! My voice was low, dangerous. Do not lie to me. Her mouth snapped shut. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, feel the rage bubbling under my skin, threatening to explode. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked at the phone again, like maybe, just maybe, she could wish it all away. But she couldn't. I had seen everything, and there was no coming back from this. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. How did you get into my phone? I laughed. A bitter, humorless sound. That's what you're worried about? I took a step closer, watching her shrink back. That I saw it? Not the fact that my throat tightened. Not the fact that you're sleeping with I couldn't even say it. The words tasted like poison. Her breathing was shallow, panicked. She knew there was no way out of this. Please, she whispered, reaching for me. I jerked away, the touch of her hand like acid on my skin. Don't. My voice was ice. Just tell me the truth, Emily. Tell me the goddamn truth. Her lips parted. And then, she said something that made the floor drop out from under me. Something that made my entire world tilt. Something that changed everything. Emily lunged for the phone. Her fingers reached out desperately, trembling, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She wasn't thinking, just reacting, like a wild animal cornered, like someone whose world was collapsing around them. But I was faster. I yanked the phone away before she could touch it, my grip so tight my knuckles ached. My entire body burned with rage, my heart slamming against my ribs like a war drum. Her face was twisted with panic, eyes wide, mouth opening and closing as if she were trying to form a coherent thought, trying to find a way out of the nightmare she had created. It's not what you think. Not what I think. I roared, my voice echoing off the bathroom walls. Then explain this. I shoved the phone in front of her face, the screen still lit up with the messages. The damning, disgusting, undeniable proof. She flinched as if I had struck her. Tears welled in her eyes, her breathing coming in sharp, uneven gasps. Please, just let me explain, she whispered. Explain? Explain what, exactly? How she had lied to me. How she had betrayed me in the most unthinkable way. How she had looked me in the eyes for months, maybe years, while she was sneaking around behind my back. She broke down then, sobbing, her whole body shaking. I never meant for you to find out this way, she choked out, covering her face with her hands. I felt something snap inside me. Oh, so that was it? Not that she regretted it. Not that she was sorry. She was just sorry she had gotten caught. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. It was ugly, sharp, filled with something dark and corrosive. You never meant for me to find out? I repeated, my voice cold, cutting. That's what you're upset about. She looked up at me then, her tear-streaked face filled with fear. But I wasn't sure she was afraid of losing me, or afraid of what I might do next. You don't understand. Then make me understand. I bellowed, slamming my fist against the counter so hard that the bottles on the sink rattled. She jumped. I had never screamed at her before, never lost control like this. But nothing about this was normal. Nothing about this was forgivable. My chest heaved. My mind was a chaotic mess, my thoughts unraveling so fast I could barely hold on to them. Tell me, Emily, I spat. Tell me how the hell this happened. Tell me how long you've been sneaking around. Tell me how you thought I'd never find out. She was shaking her head over and over, her fingers gripping her towel like it was the only thing holding her together. It's not what you think, she whispered again, voice broken. I exhaled sharply through my nose, failing, to keep myself under control. Then tell me what it is. I demanded. She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. She wasn't scrambling to tell the truth. She was scrambling to find a lie I'd believe. And that's when I knew. She wasn't going to tell me the truth. Not willingly. Not unless I forced it out of her. I took a deep breath, my hands clenching into fists. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice suddenly calm. Too calm. Emily's lips parted, but no words came out. She couldn't say it. She wouldn't say it. But I already knew the answer. I had seen the photos. I had heard the voice message. And there was only one explanation. "Say it," I growled. She sobbed, her whole body collapsing in on itself. I can't," she whispered. I stepped closer, my entire body trembling with barely contained rage. "Say it." She squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head violently. "Please, It's my father, isn't I, T?" She let out a choked gasp, like the air had been punched out of her lungs. And in that moment I saw it. The way her face crumbled, the way the blood drained from her skin, the way her legs nearly gave out beneath her. She didn't have to say anything. The truth was written all over her face. And it was worse than I could have ever imagined. I couldn't stop shaking. Every muscle in my body was locked in place, tight with rage, disgust, and something even darker, something I couldn't name. My own father? My own blood? I turned away from Emily, unable to look at her any longer. She was still sobbing, still pleading, still trying to find words that wouldn't change anything. I could barely hear her. Everything around me had become background noise, muffled and distant, like I was trapped underwater. I needed answers. Now. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed his number. 1 ring. 2. No answer. I gritted my teeth, my breathing uneven as I hit redial. Nothing. Coward. I clenched my jaw, so hard it hurt, my grip on the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. And then, a text. A single notification flashed across the screen. "We need to talk. Please. It's not what you think." Oh. But it was exactly what I thought. I laughed. A cold, bitter sound that felt foreign in my own throat. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't some innocent mistake. This was deliberate. Calculated. My father, the man who raised me, had been sneaking around with my wife. Lying to me. Deceiving me. Destroying me. I could still see those messages in my mind, burned into my vision like a sickening afterimage. The words he had said to her. The photos. And the voice message. I still couldn't wrap my head around it. How was he even alive? I had watched them lower his casket into the ground. I had stood there, numb and broken, while the dirt was shoveled over his grave. I had mourned him. Had Emily known the whole time? Had she been lying to me for years? Had my father faked his death? Why? My hands curled into fists. I needed to see him, to look him in the eye, to hear him say it, but he wouldn't even pick up the damn phone. Coward. I turned back to Emily. She was standing there, her eyes red and swollen, her body trembling. She knew what I was going to do. "You're leaving, aren't you?" she whispered. I stared at her, my chest rising and falling in slow, steady breaths. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to throw something, break something, make her feel just an ounce of the pain tearing through me like wildfire. But instead, I did something worse. I smiled. A slow, humorless, empty smile. "You have no idea what I'm going to do." And then without another word, I walked out. I didn't know where I was going yet. But I knew one thing. This wasn't over. That night, I moved like a ghost through the house, my body running on pure adrenaline. My hands grabbed at clothes, stuffing them into a suitcase without thought, without care. My mind wasn't even fully here. I was somewhere else, detached, watching myself from a distance. This wasn't my home anymore. Not after what I had seen. Not after what she had done. Emily was still crying. I could hear her muffled sobs from the hallway, her footsteps pacing, her breath coming in quick, panicked gasps. She was begging me to talk, pleading. "Please, just let me explain," she whimpered. "You can't just leave like this. We need to talk. We need to. I zipped the suitcase shut with one violent motion, cutting her off. There was nothing left to say. I turned to her, my face void of emotion. You don't get to beg me for anything, I said, my voice eerily calm. She flinched. Her eyes searched mine, desperately trying to find something. Some sign of the man she used to know, some sliver of hope that I might stay. But he was gone. She had killed him. I slung the bag over my shoulder and pushed past her, ignoring the way her fingers grasped weakly at my arm. I didn't stop, not even when she let out a choked sob, not even when she whispered, "I love you." Lies. I made my way down the stairs, each step echoing like a funeral march. The house that had once felt warm, familiar, ours, now felt like a tomb. At the front door, I paused just long enough to pull out my phone. I had one final thing to do before I left this life behind. I opened my messages, scrolled to my father's name, and typed out the last words I would ever send him. "You're dead to me." Then, without hesitation, I blocked his number. I didn't need to hear his excuses. I didn't need to understand. He was a ghost now. As far as I was concerned, he had died twice. Once in the grave, and once when he decided to rip my life apart. I stepped outside. The cold night air hit my skin, sharp and bracing, but I welcomed it. Anything to feel something other than the rage, the betrayal, the shattered pieces of my own existence. Behind me, I heard Emily's footsteps. I didn't turn around, didn't stop walking, didn't care what she had to say anymore. She had made her choice, and now I was making mine. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away. I didn't look back, because there was nothing left behind me worth saving. It's been 6 months. 6 months since I packed my bags and walked out that door. 6 months since I blocked his number. Since I shut down every trace of them in my life. Since I erased them from my world. I wish I could sit here and tell you that I've moved on, that I've healed, that I barely think about it anymore. That I've become one of those people who say, everything happens for a reason. But that would be a lie, because the truth is, this broke me. The betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was a poison. It seeped into everything, into the way I trust, into the way I love, into the way I see people now. I don't sleep the same, I don't feel the same, because how do you come back from something like this? How do you ever look at the world the same way after realizing that the people you trusted the most, the two people who were supposed to love you more than anyone, were the same ones who ripped you apart? I thought the worst part would be the anger, the rage, the hatred, but it wasn't. The worst part was the emptiness. The first few weeks were a blur. I drank too much, slept too little, spent hours staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of something that would never make sense. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages, those photos. Him, with her. There were nights, I swore, I could still hear her voice, pleading with me to stay. Nights where I thought about picking up my phone, dialing his number, demanding to know why. But I never did, because the answer wouldn't change anything. Because some betrayals don't need explanations. They just need to be left behind. I moved to a new apartment, changed my number, got rid of everything that reminded me of them. But even after all that, the ghost still followed me. It's not like in the movies where you wake up one day and suddenly feel whole again. No dramatic realization, no moment of clarity that makes it all disappear. Healing is slower, uglier. It's waking up every morning and deciding not to let the pain define you. It's choosing, every single day, not to let what they did destroy what's left of you. And I won't lie, some days I still lose that fight. Some days, I still wonder if I'll ever love again. If I'll ever let someone close enough to hurt me like that again. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones who will destroy you the worst. And when that happens, you have two choices. Let it break you forever, or let it make you stronger. I'm still figuring out which one I'll be.